My great-grandparents emigrated to America from Italy and Ireland about a century ago at this point. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. They came here presumably for better opportunities. America has sold itself on this brand and this ideology of the great melting pot and this place where anyone can achieve any dream. It's this place that has branded itself around this idea of the American dream, the idea that anyone can make anything happen here. Anyone can live whatever dream it is they want. And maybe a century ago that was true. Maybe. Or, more likely, we've been sold on a fantasy that's never really been true, but a fantasy that is so deeply ingrained at the root of our culture that all of us, to some extent, whether we realize it or not, have been indoctrinated with it since birth. So I don't think I need to tell you. Everything that's going on right now, I don't think I need to inform you or remind you of where we stand on the precipice, the razor's edge of fascism. I don't think I need to tell you that. I think you know. And I've tried to avoid talking about things like this because it's depressing and everyone's talking about it. And it's not as if it's not like we get a moment's peace, but I've been thinking a lot about, my forebearers, my grandparents on my mother's side who came here from who came to, Ellis Island, the Ellis Island in New York, from Italy and Ireland. I think about the fact that they were coming here for a lot of the same reasons I'm thinking about leaving. They're coming here for the same reasons that I find myself longing for a homeland that I've never even been to. I've never been out of the country. A lot's changed in the last 100 years, obviously. It's a lot harder to leave your home country. It's a lot more arduous than it's ever been. And I think a lot of places make it almost impossible to find, how you actually do it. They make it very, very difficult for anyone to go there, even legally. And of course, that's its own video, frankly. I've also found myself thinking a lot about the people who gave up everything to come here who weren't specifically related to me. People who have given up their entire lives because they've been sold on this idea that things are possible here, that if you work hard and you try hard, that you can accomplish your dreams here. They've been sold on this idea, even if you weren't born here, people have been sold on this idea that America is this land of opportunity. People have been sold on this mythos that if you come here, you can achieve almost anything. It's such a pervasive idea that it invades every single piece of media that you see. Even if you don't realize it, it invades so much of media and especially social media. It invades so much of YouTube and this hustle culture that we find ourselves in. This idea that if you just work really, really, really hard, you can make it. You can become one of the elite special people, I guess. The successful people, people like Oprah. You can go to Hollywood and become a famous actress. You can become a singer. You can go on Broadway. There's so many avenues and opportunities. Even as an artist like myself, there's plenty of people who once upon a time nobody knew. Stephen King got a lot of rejections before he became successful. And you hear about that a lot. You hear about the people who struggled and fought and clawed their way up and made it. And you think, I could do that. Why couldn't I? We've been so sold on this idea that in America specifically, everybody has an equal chance and an equal shot. But that isn't strictly true, is it? And I have to wonder if it's ever been true. The thing is, this idea, this like American dream, is so pervasive and fed to you since birth that even if you're not American, you have an idea of what it looks like to be here. You have this image in your head, you have this concept that has been fed to you by decades and decades of popular culture. That sort of rags to riches storyline of a person, usually an American, who came from nothing and managed to make themselves into something better. Hell, as a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul and Trixie Mattel, among others, are huge examples of that. It's an idea that is so biblical in proportion and so sacrosanct in the American way of life that most people won't even entertain the possibility that it's not true. Because to acknowledge that, to admit it, is to recognize that perhaps everything we've been told about where we come from and who we are and what opportunities we have or don't have isn't true. And maybe if we acknowledge that, we have to ask ourselves, who are we really working for? The truth is, it's not easy to recognize that the beliefs that you have been taught about yourself and your country are not strictly the most accurate. And it's something that shakes you up a lot when you realize it. Speaking as someone who has realized later in life that what I thought I knew about my sexuality was not the case. You know, coming out as a lesbian at 29 after, you know, dating and trying to experience that world with men, realizing that I was so off the mark at, you know, an early age, but what feels like so much older is a very strange thing because it makes you wonder, well, if I was wrong about this, what the hell else have I been wrong about? Do I even really know myself? And the thing that I think a lot of people have to ask themselves is, if the American dream isn't true, what else isn't? We're so desperate to believe in the idea of the self made millionaire, self made billionaire, that even when all of the evidence tells us that this person had already wealthy parents or they had investors, they had parents who were already famous, people that they knew who gave them some leg up in the industry, a lot of people rally against that and fight that because that would shake up their worldview. And that's a terrifying concept because then they have to acknowledge that maybe all this work and effort isn't really worth it. We're so desperate to believe in this idea of the American dream that if we just work really, really hard and we hustle and just believe in ourselves and believe in our dreams that somehow, some way, someone is going to notice us and it's all going to have been worth it because we'll get that money and we'll get that dream house and dream car, and everything that we have given up to get here will have been worth it. Every sleepless night, every extra shift at work, every time we gave up hanging out with our friends, every missed relationship opportunity. It will all have been worth it because we will have been vindicated that what we have been working towards was worth it. And the funny thing is, no matter how challenging the odds, no matter how unlikely, every time we see someone who beats the odds or seems to beat the odds, every time someone blows up on TikTok, every time a YouTuber gets to 10 million subscribers, every time a new queen wins Drag Race and gets ahead just a little bit, we feel like maybe it's possible because if they can do it, I can do it. Surely. Every time Oprah talks about the hard work it takes to get somewhere, every time some new person promotes some new way of getting successful and rich and famous or whatever, it buys into that facade. It builds the fantasy. And the work is part of the fantasy. The idea of working really, really hard to achieve your dreams, that's part of the American dream. In some ways, we kind of like that it's difficult. If it was easy, as they say, everyone would do it. The reality, of course, is that a lot of it is luck. A lot, a lot of it is luck. And a lot of it is who you know, which is just kind of luck in a different form, really. You know, if you were lucky enough to be born to wealthy parents, if you were lucky enough to know someone who could get you into a good school and a good college and help you get ahead, that is luck because not everyone has that. Not everyone has access to that. Rarely is the story that we hear about someone who genuinely knew absolutely no one and just by sheer serendipitous happenstance struck the right chord at the right time and made it huge. But it's that rare exception that keeps the fantasy alive. Because if they can do it, if they can beat the odds, why can't you? Every time you hear a new news story about someone with 6 side hustles making $10,000 a month, or someone selling some AI book that got them $100,000 on Amazon a year, you start to think, why didn't I think of that? Or maybe you think, who would do that? People work themselves to literal death because they have been sold on the idea that if they do so, maybe they will get somewhere. They think that if they work just a little bit harder, a little bit longer, stay up a little bit later, that maybe it will get them somewhere. And you can't ever quit because just when you're about to quit, that's when so many people are so close to making it. Seen that image of, you know, the person who's digging for diamonds and he quits right at the end, right when he's at the goal. So you can't ever quit because if you quit, you won't reach that dream. And of course, the moment you want to quit is the moment when you're right there. You're so close, so you can't ever stop. So you stay up a little bit later. You push yourself just a little bit harder. You forget meals, you forget friends, relationships, everything goes to the wayside because The only thing that matters is achieving that goal of beating the odds, because it's never really just about you, is it? I mean, yeah, sure, it's something when it's about you. It's a little bit your ego, but you just want to take care of people. You want to take care of your friends, your family. You want to not feel like you have to struggle anymore. You want to be your own boss because, God, it sucks to be stuck under someone else. So many managers suck. They don't know what they're doing. They have no compassion. And you know that if it was you, you would be better. And so you have to create your own job. You have to create your own opportunities because otherwise you're going to be stuck. So you ignore the tens of thousands, maybe even millions, who never succeeded. Sort of have to step over their corpses as they line the field of dreams. You have to ignore the people who never reach their dreams and tell yourself that it was because they didn't want it as bad as you did. They weren't as strong as you were. They weren't willing to work as hard as you are. You have to keep fighting and ignore everyone who's ever not managed to make it, who's either given up or literally died trying. You can't really acknowledge any of that because to acknowledge it is to acknowledge that the odds aren't in your favor. And maybe that's part of the appeal for some people. I certainly know my own drive has made me the sort of person that knowing the odds aren't in my favor kind of does make it more appealing. It's the proof that I defied what everyone else thought. In case it wasn't obvious, I think in a lot of ways I'm talking to myself with this one. I've always wanted to be a successful author, successful YouTuber. I've always wanted to make enough money to take care of my mother so that she didn't have to work. She was a single mom. She's worked two jobs my entire life. All she's ever known is working as hard as she possibly can to make things a little bit easier for us. I think I get my work ethic from her. I spent the better part of my life trying to get ahead to make her life easier because I know how hard she works. I didn't expect this to get me. Oh shit. I know how hard she works. It has worked my whole life. And so part of me achieving my dreams is being able to help her and make it so she doesn't have to work so hard. Part of it is I want her to be able to retire. I've wanted her to be able to retire for as long as I can remember. I've always worked hard at like my own dreams to make that happen. I make videos, video essays. I have been writing novels since I was 11, short stories, you know, scripts, anything I could think of to get my name out there. I've had about 1 million blogs. I have a Patreon. I've worked so damn hard because I know that I'm talented and I know that I deserve this. And that's not me being full of myself. That's not me being cocky. I just happen to know that I work hard and that I'm good at what I do. And I love what I do and I'm passionate about what I do. And I always have been. But I'm starting to realize that I've bought into the myth that if you work hard, if you're good at what you do, if you're talented, if you work yourself to the brink of exhaustion, mentally and emotionally and physically, then someday you will achieve your dream. I've been struggling a lot mentally, if you couldn't tell. I want to believe that all of this is going to be worth it, because the alternative is frankly terrifying. Actually, the alternative is my literal worst nightmare. The idea that this this is all there is. That maybe this is all there's ever going to be. We didn't get along, but I often find myself thinking about the fact that my father had a lot of big dreams too. Dreams that never came to pass, dreams that died with him. I spent a lot of time in my life being afraid of ending up like him, dying unsuccessful, alone. It's not a good time. He's not the only person in the world who's ever died trying to achieve their dreams. Hell, there's people who die just dreaming of getting into this country. There's people who die every day at the border, just desperate for the opportunity to get here. I sometimes think about the people, in Palestine who they had dreams. There were mothers with dreams, fathers with dreams of what their children would get to do. Children with dreams of what they'd get to do, what they'd grow up to be, and those were snatched away from them. Think about every young queer person who's ever been killed, who had dreams. Every young queer person who ended their life, or whose life was ended by HIV and AIDS, or negligence, or some asshole who decided that it was their place to end someone's life. I think about the dreams that they had, what they could have done with their lives. And I realize that I am lucky. I'm a queer person in her 30s. That doesn't happen a lot. I mean, more now, but for a long time, that wasn't true. We have so few queer elders because of that history of violence and neglect and abuse. And I can't help but wonder how many dreams were lost. There's been so many people over the course of the world who were just like me, who had huge dreams, huge aspirations for where they wanted to be, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to accomplish. So many people who didn't make it. So many people whose dreams died with them. And it feels kind of selfish of me to sit here with this big ass townhouse that I live in, with my mother, with you guys, you're my subscribers, with Patreon. It feels selfish of me that I even have these fears, but I can't deny that they're there. I can't deny the fact that there is that fear that no matter how hard I work and how hard I try and how much I pray and manifest and light a candle and cast every spell that I know, that it ultimately won't be enough. I know that some dreams just don't happen for people. You can live your whole life, a full life, and still not have achieved the dreams that you set out for yourself. But I'll be honest, that fear of not achieving what I've set out to has been something that's fueled me for the better part of the last 20 years. the dream. It's the it's the fear that has spurned me on and made me someone who has pushed through so much because I cannot fathom what my life would be like if I don't achieve everything that I've set out for. But the thing that I've come to realize is that I'm exhausted. I sometimes wonder what I have to show for all of the work that I've done for the past 20 years. What was it all for? And the thing is, all the hard work that I've done just to get here, all the continued hard work, it's not like it ever feels like enough. It's never felt like enough because until I reach that metaphorical brass ring, until I break through that ceiling, it will never feel like enough. It will never feel like no matter what I do, no matter how much work I do, it never feels like enough. I've started to realize I don't actually know what if it would ever feel like enough. What does that even mean? At what point have I achieved this ever nebulous, ever changing success that I can call enough? Would I ever really truly be able to say that I achieved my dreams? Would it ever be enough? I know how I am now. I wrote 1,000,000 words just last year, and I didn't even really stop to celebrate it. It was just like, okay, cool. I wrote 2 short stories just this year, and it's only February 20th. Never really stopped to congratulate myself on that either. I don't think I've missed more than a week or two at a time of making YouTube videos even after my cat died. And it never even occurred to me to view that as an accomplishment just in itself. I got my first check from YouTube recently, which was exciting, and at no point did I ever feel really proud of that. I recently learned that I'm one of the top students in my MBA class with a GPA of 3.8, and the only thing I could think of was, why isn't it a 4.0? I've never even been close to a 3.8. Fanfics of mine have reached 20,000 readers. I mean, just in the 2 years that I've been writing fanfic recently, I've had over 600,000 back in my other fanfic days, my previous fandom. I had close to 1,000,000 in 2 years. Over total, I've had millions of readers between the two. I wrote a book in 2020 that was featured by Wattpad for their Pride collection. It got 50,000 reads in 2 weeks. And sure, I was excited about it, but I just couldn't help but think, what's next? It was always what's next. What can I do more? I have 1,400 subscribers here on YouTube. Had over 150,000 views over 8 years on YouTube. That sure as hell doesn't feel like enough. I've written blogs, I've started new ones, I've written hundreds and hundreds of blogs. I've read 5 books just in the last year, just this, past 2 months. Read one in a single day. I've made podcasts. I've made at least over 500 videos, whether or not they're live anymore. And through that all, I've still managed to write books. I mean, I had written over 10 books by the time I was 18. And it's never, ever felt like enough. Not even once. I don't know, maybe there's some gaping hole inside of me that just will never be filled because, sure, I've accomplished a lot, but I'm not where I want it to be. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. this nebulous idea that's in my head. I'm not there, so what does it matter? And that's the realization that I've come to. I don't even know what would be good enough for me. I don't know at what point I would feel as though I've done enough and it's good enough and I can be happy. Spent the better part of my life being terrified of ending up like my father with my dreams unfulfilled. But, I mean, even if I had the entire world at my fingertips and every dream I have ever had, even if I accomplished every single one, can I honestly say that would be enough? That the goalpost wouldn't move again and that I wouldn't find something else to run after? In my head, I'd like to think that I wouldn't, that I would be satisfied. But I don't know if that's true. Would I allow myself to celebrate then? And if I can't celebrate now, when do I allow myself to celebrate my accomplishments? When does that gaping maw of need of validation and approval from strangers, when does that go away? What would it even mean to feel as though the effort that I have put in and all of the work that I have put in was enough? What would it even mean to feel like I actually accomplished everything that I've set out for? Who would I even be if I wasn't always striving for something new? And the thing is, I'm not incapable of imagining what I think success looks like for me. It's not as if I haven't fantasized about it enough, but I realize that when I reach the point of what I deem success, the goalpost will move again, will change again, and I'm sure I would find a way to still downplay my accomplishments, to still downplay my achievements, to still downplay everything that I've done. Because the truth is, as much as it's the American dream, it's an impossible standard to live up to. It's a constantly moving goalpost. And I know that even if I achieved everything I've ever dreamed of, even if I was a full-time best-selling author, even if I was a full-time YouTuber, even if I had the most, just everything that I have ever wanted, I would still find a way to downplay it and to not feel like it was enough and to doubt myself and to feel as though I have not done enough. I'd like to believe that it could be as simple as saying, if I have changed one person's life with my writing, or even a few people's lives, that I will feel as though I accomplished what I set out to. If anything that I have written or created on YouTube has ever meant anything to people, then I will have achieved what I have always wanted to. But the thing that I don't apparently realize or acknowledge to myself is that I have done that. I've been doing that with my writing for a while now. I've been doing that with YouTube for a while now. My videos on the Butch Femme identity and my Butch Femme 101 video has meant a lot for a lot of people. I know because I've gotten comments about it. I've gotten messages about how much my fanfic has meant to people and how much these stories have meant to people. Even if it's not a lot of people or even as many as I think it should be, whatever that even means, my work has meant a lot to people. It's made people happy and emotional and wistful and yearning. And maybe that can be enough. I think in a lot of ways, without intending to, I've fallen for the capitalist trap of viewing myself as a machine that needs to be constantly producing. I think I've viewed myself as someone who, if you were not at that brass ring, if you haven't broke through that ceiling of success, then what are you even doing with yourself? If you're not constantly hustling and working and writing something new and working on something new, then what are you even doing? I've had all this time, I've had months since I got laid off, and it's not as if I'm making extra videos, not really writing any more than I was before. In fact, in some ways, I'm writing less. What am I doing with that time? Not sleeping, but I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything either. I've spent 2 decades of my life with an ambition that truly, truly seemed inexhaustible. And in that time, I've managed to overwork myself to the point of a total emotional and mental breakdown about every couple of years. I have what I can only describe a drive and single minded focus to achieve the things that I want to, that I don't think is ever going to go away, and I don't think I would want it to either. Hell, moving to another country almost requires it. But maybe it's okay to celebrate myself where I'm at, to celebrate my accomplishments as they are now. Maybe it's okay to be grateful for where I'm at and for what I have managed to do, no matter how small it feels. Maybe it's okay to celebrate myself. Maybe it's okay for all of us to. Maybe we don't have to downplay our accomplishments or to minimize them or to act like we're not doing enough because we're not constantly driving ourselves into an early grave working for something that's so intangible. The other thing I think about a lot is my younger self. What did she want to do? What was her dreams? I think in a lot of ways I've achieved things that she wanted. I remember being 5, 6 years old, always loving witches and magic and things like that, always wanting to have my own wand and to be a witch, always wanting to fly on a broom, always wanting to be who I get to be now. Being a writer is something I've wanted for a long time. Of course, that's part of, something I wanted as a kid. But I've also achieved a lot of things. I literally am a witch. I've talked about that a lot. I own a wand. It's upstairs. I should have brought it down with me, but not the point. I actually own two. So, I do have those things that I wanted. And yeah, I don't fly on a broom. That's unfortunate, girly. We can't break the laws of physics. Sorry to my younger self, I still can't break that law of physics. If anyone can figure out how to make it work, though, let me know, because I would love it. I guess if you have like one of those like fan bikes, you're getting really close, and I think that would probably be the closest you could get. I think what I've realized is I don't know what the future holds. No one does. I don't actually know if everything that I have ever dreamed of is going to come to fruition the way I want it to. But I do know this. I do know that I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of what I have accomplished, and I am proud of how far I've come. Because the reality is, while it's nice to know that there are people who enjoy what I do, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy my writing. I enjoy my videos. And that wasn't always the case. There was a long, long time where I hated my writing. It was a long time I couldn't stand to read my own writing. Everything about it I didn't like. And the realization that I regularly will go back and read my own writing and enjoy it a lot is not something I ever really not a place I thought I would get to because I was very self-conscious. I wanted to be more talented than I was, but I just couldn't seem to get there. And so being in a position where I can say that I am proud of myself and proud of what I've managed to do is a really big deal for me. And maybe I don't have to hate where I'm at because I have worked damn hard to get where I am and to be the person that I am today. Loving myself isn't always easy. I may make it look easy, but it's not always. But I love myself now more than I ever have. And I'm proud of myself more than I've ever been. And maybe that's okay because I've worked hard to become myself. So I guess the next question becomes, what do I do with all this information? It's all well and good to have a aha moment of self-realization, but it doesn't really mean anything if I don't change things about myself, or at least change the things that I can change. You know, if I don't do anything with the information that I have, it's not really all that useful, is it? I mean, sure, I realize that in the long run, I still have to do what I've always done, write and make YouTube videos and make short stories if I feel like it, keep going with my master's program, but not constantly comparing myself to other people, not constantly comparing my output to other people, not constantly comparing my view count or readership count or subscriber count or getting upset because this video didn't do as good as it should have or this video isn't doing as good as it should have. I think that's where it's really tricky. Making the content and putting it out is the easy part. Not getting frustrated because it's not doing well, that's what's tricky. Because the thing of it is, anybody who's ever done YouTube knows that staring at your analytics and trying to make heads or tails of it and trying to find the trends of what videos do well and what videos are successful and how you can repeat that success so you can keep making videos that people like and keep growing your channel and your brand is a constant struggle. And it's exhausting. And I don't know that any of us ever really beat that. I don't know if you ever can fully get out of that, especially if you're dependent on it in a weird way. YouTube is sort of a snake eating its own tail because you want to be able to make the content you want to make, but if you are dependent on YouTube, you are dependent on making videos that people want to see. And you don't always know what people want to see because sometimes some content you make does really well. Other content you make doesn't do as well. And there's no rhyme or reason because it's still you talking. But then you start to second guess, should I be making these kinds of videos? If videos on witchcraft aren't successful, should I even bother making them? But what videos of mine have been successful? I made a drag race video that one review got 13,000 hits and other reviews didn't even crack 1,000. I don't know what that's about. The algorithm is a mystery. And the reality is it isn't just when I'm putting out content and videos don't do as well as I think they should, or stories don't do as well as I think they should. It isn't just that that gets me into that feeling of I'm not getting anywhere, or nobody cares about what I'm doing, or nobody likes this, or whatever. It's also that feeling that sometimes when it's late at night, or in my case, early in the morning, since I don't sleep at night anyway, that I find myself feeling like, how did I let another day go by and I haven't done anything that I wanted to do? I didn't write, I didn't learn something new. I have all of these things on my to-do list, and what of them did I actually accomplish? And those are the thoughts that I have to work through. Those are ultimately the thoughts that you have to fight. And, meditation helps, although there's only so much of that I can frankly stomach, and mindfulness, whatever the hell that means, I suppose helps staying in the moment. That feels like such a nebulous concept to me, if I'm honest. I certainly don't mean for those feelings that I'm not doing enough to come. I'm not trying to make them happen, but I have to be able to figure out how to combat that. I try and remind myself that I'm not Catholic and I'm not a Puritan, and I am not solely my output. I am not solely what I manage to accomplish. I'm a person outside of those things. I am not the sum of what people interact with me or acknowledge me or anything like that. But in our social media driven world, it can be very difficult not to feel as though you are constantly in some imaginary competition, I would say, with the world. I'd like to think that I could find a way to not compare myself to other people, to not look at someone and have that knee jerk reaction of, oh, they're so much further ahead. They're doing so much more. They're doing this and this and this and this and this. And I can't ignore those feelings or those thoughts because as much as I think people say ignoring them is the better, letting them exist, whatever is the best strategy, I think ignoring thoughts is just going to make them scream at me more. So what I have to do, I think, is acknowledge the thoughts for what they are and correct them. If I have the thought that I'm not doing enough or that I haven't accomplished enough or that I should be doing this or should be doing that, then I can say, okay, that's very nice, but I am not my output. I am not based solely on my productivity. I am a person beyond that. I am a person beyond what I accomplish in any given day or any given week or any given month. Sometimes I feel kind of like, that old saying that if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, wait, what does that say? If a tree falls in the wood and no one hears it, did it really fall or something like that? I think in this day and age, it's kind of like if you have a YouTube account or an Instagram account and barely anyone follows you, are you even really a YouTuber? Are you even really, do you even exist? If you create a piece of media and nobody sees it, did you even create it? That's so much of what I think our current system is. It's so much of how I think we all view ourselves. But that's not really fair, is it? Even if nobody watches it, I still created this video. Even if no one reads something that I wrote, I still wrote it. Yeah, sure, it's nice to have people read it. It's nice to have people want to read things that you create, but you still made it. You still wrote it. You still created that thing. Not everything is real because people have seen it. Not everything matters because people read it or watched it or listened to it or whatever. You are a person outside of what you make and outside of what you accomplish and outside of what other people acknowledge of what you accomplished. We take our whimsy where we can get it, of course. I certainly I certainly enjoyed the snow when we had it a couple of weeks ago. I ran around in that and had a good time, and that is footage that will be staying with me because it was just for me. I'm not really someone who goes out a lot. I stay home, I read. I used to take baths, but that's not really fun anymore. I hang out with my pets. I do makeup. I make videos and I write and I read, although the reading hasn't been that enjoyable. I've been experiencing a bit of fandom burnout, I think. Maybe it's just burnout in general from everything. And it's been disappointing not writing new fanfics. I kind of miss it. Haven't really even been reading them because I've just not had the energy for it. I feel the best when I'm writing. I feel the best when I'm, creating and putting out new things. Yeah, I want people to watch my videos. I want people to enjoy my work because at least part of it is that you want to be appreciated. You want people to care. I don't do these things just for me. I mean, yeah, it's fun for me. And a lot of the times I talk about things that I want to talk about because it's fun for me. But, without conversations, without dialogue, it's not that much fun. The hope is that people will talk to you and, you know, share their feelings, share their experiences. Part of why I and anyone does this thing called YouTube or writing or art is that you want it to make a difference in people's lives. The last thing I've been thinking about a lot is one of the things I wanted to do as a writer, one of the things I wanted to accomplish, one of the things that felt important to me, and why I love stories and books so much in the first place. I remember when I was a kid, I was overweight, so I was bullied a lot. Wore glasses, was bullied for that. I was kind of nerdy. I was never the normal kid. And, you know, obviously, even in my home life, because of my parents' divorce, I always felt that was always difficult for me too. And books were a way for me to escape that. Books were a way to live in a completely different world where I didn't have to think about the things that were going on around me. And I always wanted to create that escapist feeling for people. I always wanted to help people who were going through a difficult time feel like when they read something I wrote, they got to go somewhere else. They got to be somewhere else for just a little bit that wasn't, where they were. And I think if anything, that's what I'm trying to remind myself the most is that at the end of the day, that's what I want people to take away from my writing. I want to have created a place where people can lose themselves in a story, can lose themselves in the characters, can lose themselves in this world that I have created and not have to feel the weight of everything else around them, especially right now. And if anything, the reason I want to write more and the reason I want to write a little bit faster than I've been is because I think now more than ever, we can all use a little escapism. I'm hopeful that things will get better. I'm hopeful that this is not the end of things. I'm hopeful of a lot of things. I'm a realist, of course, but I don't know. I always have hope. I'm not necessarily a patient person. I know that about myself. And I hold myself to an impossibly high standard. But I have always hoped that the world will ultimately get better. The people will get better. And I think that's another thing that's kept me through. Ambition is one thing, but ambition without hope is, I don't know what that is. Nothing, really. you know, like you have to have hope. Thank you for indulging what I would call an unusual video. Thank you for indulging me on a not typical video of mine. I haven't done a video essay in a very long time, and certainly not one this maudlin. I don't think ever, or at least not in a very long time. I don't like to cry a lot in general, and certainly not on YouTube. There's something about me that, I don't know, it feels like you're letting someone who hates you win by letting them see you cry or sweat, as they say. Another toxic trait that comes from the hustle culture, I suppose. But I wanted to be honest with this video. This is probably one of my rawest videos. I sent it to one of my friends to read, and he said it was very existential, which I can see. I don't make a lot of videos like this, and I don't know that I necessarily would, just for the sheer fact that it was just kind of what I'm feeling in this moment. And I really, I don't know. I want to talk about happier things. I don't want to make a habit of talking about things that are sad and depressing because nobody wants to hear that. It's hard enough to live it. But anyway, thank you for indulging me in this. We will be back to your we will be back to your regularly scheduled programming soon. If there's anything you want to see from me going forward, let me know. More witchy content, more fandom content, more makeup content. I'm down for anything. I have to believe it's going to get better. I'm hopeful, but in the words of Meryl Streep at the end of the film of the same name, I have such doubts.